What is up, everyone? Welcome into DodgerHeads Live, presented by DodgerBlue.com. My name is Jeff Spiegel. I am joined by Daniel Starkin, and what a night it is. This is a game that I think every Dodger fan, Daniel, had circled on the schedule as soon as it came out. The Astros, of course, cheated the Dodgers out of a World Series in 2017. This was their first chance to kind of get back at them since the scandal broke. And I think the biggest question for me, and we'll get to the nitty-gritty, there's obviously a lot to talk about here tonight, and we'll get to the runs, but I think the thing that everyone wants to know going into the game is, will there be fireworks? Would the Dodgers throw at the Astros? And there's lots of places we could start, but I can't get a smile off of my face because a guy that I hated 24 hours ago is now a guy that I absolutely love and adore, and that man is Joe Kelly. And this is a guy, as I said, this is a guy who is generally not liked, and that might even be generous by Dodger fans, but I think based on Twitter, based on some text messages, that has changed. Let me break down the situation and we can dive in. Joe Kelly comes in for the sixth inning. He gets a one-pitch out for Altuve, and then Alex Bregman comes up. Now, of all the guys on the Astros, I think Bregman's probably the guy that we like the least, right? That might be safe to say. Kelly falls behind 3-0. He can't throw a strike. And then the next pitch, 96.4 miles an hour, fastball right over the top of Alex Bregman. And Joe Kelly yawns on the mound afterwards. So Bregman goes to first. Next up, we've got Brantley, and this might have been my favorite at bat only because the guy was clearly terrified in the box. He had a curveball that looked like it might be inside, and the guy was bailing out of the box so quickly. He gets out. Gurriel comes up, 4-pitch walk. Then we get to Correa, probably the number 2 most hated guy, I would guess, on the Astros. First pitch is a curveball that goes straight over the top of his head. Second pitch, curveball, again inside. Then he goes swinging strike, foul ball, stringing strike for out number 3. Kelly gets out of the jam. And the camera, of course, is fixed on Joe Kelly. Shout out to the cameraman. And Joe Kelly starts making the type of faces that you see on the playground. This is like 7-year-old type stuff. You could call it a pouty face. You could call it a sad face, a whining face. Words are exchanged. Kelly screams at him. I think he's basically saying, hey, if you're going to complain, why don't you hit the ball, basically. Like, hit the ball. Bench is clear. Nothing happens. That's that. And so, Daniel, I think the most important question, the million-dollar question tonight, and fans, please let us know in the comments what you think. Was it on purpose? Was the fastball over the top of Bregman's head a 3-0 pitch that Joe Kelly says, screw it, I'm going to walk him anyways, I'm buzzing the tower?
Yeah. So first of all, we know what Joe Kelly's capable of, right? We saw him way back in the day. The main reason why Dodger fans even hate him in the first place is because of what happened in 2013 in the NLCS when he was on the Cardinals. He threw one right at Hanley's ribs in Game 1, broke his ribs. Cardinals go on to win the series. So we know what he's capable of. But one thing we do also know as well is that Joe Kelly is one of the most wild relievers in the league. That famous video of him throwing a ball through his own window in the offseason. So it's not like he knows where the ball's going all the time. But as far as that Bregman one goes, I'm going to say that I do believe it was on purpose. At first, I didn't think it was. But then, like, when Bregman got to first, Joe Kelly started picking off over there. He's winking. So I'm going to say that one was on purpose. But the 2 breaking balls to Correa, those definitely were not on purpose. Those were just Kelly missing on a couple pitches. If he wanted to hit Correa, he's not throwing 87. He's throwing 99. So I don't really quite understand why Correa was the one that was so mad. I feel like the Astros know this is coming. You know, they know that everyone in baseball hates them, and for a year they kind of just have to wear it. They can't be getting mad every time someone throws a pitch near them, especially on a breaking ball. So yeah, I think the one to Bregman was on purpose. He didn't hit him; it was just behind him. He sent a little message, and you could see after that they were, you know, they had it in the back of their minds the whole time, and we saw they didn't score a single run after that. So maybe he didn't hit him, but he definitely sent the message.
Yeah, and like I said, Brantley, I think, who was up next, or maybe 2 batters later, I mean, he was terrified. He wanted nothing to do. And the thing about Kelly, right, is, like, he couldn't throw strikes. I mean, it was a 3-0 pitch to Bregman that obviously he's not if you're going to hit the guy, you're not going to wait till the 4th pitch. But when it is 3-0 and it's a fastball, I think that's what makes me say, okay, that's important. But, I mean, he goes on, it's like a 4-pitch walk either to the next batter or the guy after that. So there is some plausible deniability, I think, if you're Joe Kelly. I just couldn't throw it straight tonight. But I also think, I was joking with a friend beforehand. It's like Bueller might be kind of sort of the biggest jerk on the team, if you will. He seems like a guy that doesn't really care what other people think, has no problem rubbing people the wrong way, which obviously you love. But if there was a second guy that was going to hit someone, Kelly was my prediction. So when he comes into the game and you get Altuve and you get Bregman and you get Correa and you get Gurriel, I mean, you just get the middle of the lineup. It was like you knew fireworks were going to happen. They do happen, and I just love the faces. I mean, it was so demeaning. The faces that he made, it was just so insulting and so demeaning. And then he comes right back at him. He's like, hey, if you're going to sit there and whine, why don't you hit the ball? Like, you're the guy that struck out like an idiot, and I threw 2 curveballs over your head, and you still struck out. So, like, what are you doing here? I'm on board. Someone in the chat was asking, are we giving away a Joe Kelly jersey? I'd have to buy one for myself before I could give it away, and I say we build a statue. Is there any doubt in your mind, Daniel, that Joe Kelly has made up for everything that he caused the Dodgers? All pain, all anguish, the Hanley Ramirez, Red Sox in the World Series, all of the bad stuff last year. Is it all gone because of what happened tonight?
I'm going to have to say yes. I mean, but that is coming from the resident Joe Kelly stan on this show.
Okay.
So anyone who's watched the last few weeks knows I've been kind of defending him a little bit. I think he's going to have a bounce back here. But I definitely do think he kind of won over the hearts of the Dodger fans that weren't in his good graces before tonight. Because remember, he wasn't even on the 2017 team, so he wasn't cheated out of a World Series the way a lot of guys in that clubhouse were. So for him to kind of show he has their backs and he's not afraid of a team like the Astros, I think it was really cool for him to do. And again, he didn't hit anyone, so I still don't understand why the Astros are all mad and hot and bothered. But if he wants to toss a scoreless inning and trigger an entire city in the same night, that's totally fine in my book.
Yeah. I mean, the Astros were very on brand tonight. They were very petty. They were very whiny. And I think it's what all of us wanted to see. Is we wanted to see the Astros be made to look like the whiny Astros that they are. These are guys that denied cheating, that half apologized, and they got it. I mean, it was coming. And again, I hope this is a thing to come. I hope these guys are afraid every time they step into the box. I hope every curveball that looks like it's coming for their face and breaking over the plate they are bailing out of. I hope every time a wild pitcher like Joe Kelly comes on the mound. To me, I saw some of those pictures. Here's what I thought. The Max Muncy, go get it out of the ocean. That became a big meme. That became a T-shirt. Yeah. I feel like the Joe Kelly pouty face is that's the 2020 version of go get it out of the ocean. What do you think?
Oh, absolutely. I remember Giants fans being all sour about the Max Muncy thing, and now we got Astros fans calling Joe Kelly a child, which, if you ask me, Correa is the child. He's the one that started it for really no apparent reason other than a curveball came close to him. So, yeah, I loved every second of it. And we got another game tomorrow, so I'm kind of curious to see if anything's going to happen. But you definitely got the Astros players a little bit scared when they get in the box from here on out. And it also doesn't hurt that basically every guy coming out of that Dodger bullpen throws 96 plus. So
yeah, absolutely. Well, one thing I want to get to, and folks that are watching on YouTube or Facebook or Periscope, thanks for joining us. We're going to do a segment tonight called 3 Up and 3 Down. Then that's basically give us your 3 takeaways from tonight. It could be your MVPs of the game. It could be your storylines. It could be anything that jumped out to you. It could be guys that you were disappointed in, but throw those in the chat. 3 up, 3 down. Your 3 biggest storylines or people to keep an eye on. And Daniel and I will share ours. And if you've got questions as well, I mean, Harold just threw in the chat. He wondered, it was interesting that Kelly was allowed to stay in after the second batter. He walked a second guy. He threw Bregman on 4. He had 2 4-pitch walks. So were you at all surprised to see him last throughout that inning? They do have expanded rosters. So to have that many guys in the bullpen and to leave him out there, was that interesting to you?
It was. I agree with that 100%. I was kind of wondering who they had. I think it was Ferguson was warming up at the time. I was kind of wondering when he was coming in, just because we've seen this with Kelly all last year where he's a little wild, maybe walks a couple guys, and then boom, all of a sudden there's that double in the gap or that home run, and then it's a 3-4 run inning. So obviously you want to avoid those. So I was kind of looking for the bullpen, but I mean, hey, he stayed in, he got out of it, he struck out Correa, and then had the best moment of the season to this point as he's sticking his tongue out and walking back to the dugout.
Yeah, absolutely. It went from, I will admit, it went from a stressful moment to a joyful moment. Really, it went from, is this about to get blown wide open to, all right, that was awesome. Everything that I was hoping for. Linda Sharp on Facebook says Dodgers Joe Kelly Fight Club shirt. So I'm sure you'll see those somewhere. That's good. I also agree with Juan Morales. He's got Joe Kelly as number 1, 2, and 3 on his list for tonight, which I think is not a bad place to start. Well, let's break down. I mean, the fifth inning is kind of where everything started. So if you're just joining us, the Dodgers won 5-2 tonight. It's kind of a ugly win, I guess is the best way to put it. All 5 of the Dodger runs came in one inning. Of course, they beat the Astros, so there's nothing ugly. Ugly's the wrong word, but it wasn't the sexiest thing. But the fifth inning rally was where all 5 runs came in the fifth, and it was single, 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 fly out, walk, error, single, single, walk, double play. So they scored 5 runs. 10 guys come to the plate in the inning. Seager starts and ends the inning, and it was just a fascinating. I mean, just small ball, slapping singles, finding holes. What did you make of the Dodgers offense, particularly in the fifth inning?
Yeah, I think what we saw there was they were kind of doing what they were doing all night. It was just their luck turned a little bit. In the first 4 innings, they had like 7 or 8 quote unquote hard hit balls, which are balls they hit hard with like I don't even know what the qualifier is for it, like an exit velocity of 92 or higher or something like that. So they were hitting the ball hard, just right at guys. They couldn't buy a hit. They couldn't buy a run. And then in the fifth inning, we started to see their luck turn a little bit. I think Bregman made an error at some point or couldn't handle a ball at third, and their ground balls were getting through. They were continuing to hit the ball hard the way they were. They were, taking pitches, making. I think the Astros have 7 rookies in their bullpen, and a couple of them came in. And when those guys are coming in, bases loaded type situations, you want to make them throw strikes, and they couldn't at a couple points. So I think we just saw them taking the high quality at bats that really they were kind of taking all weekend. That they didn't get luck. They didn't get luck the last couple games against the Giants, but we've seen some good at bats from them, and that fifth inning, it all just kind of came together, and they were able to put together a rally that was good enough to win it.
Yeah, so to your point, 6 walks for the Dodgers on the night. Here's to the hard hit number that you were just referencing. I mean, this is remarkable. Of the 11 hardest hit balls in the game, 9 came off the bat of Dodgers. And if you go even further, of the 24 hardest hit baseballs in the game, 19 of them came on the bat of the Dodgers. So 19 of the 24 hardest hit baseballs tonight were by the Dodgers. Yeah. But honestly, if you go back to the Giants game, I think it was, on Sunday, it looked terrible, but I think it was the same thing. It was like 8 of the 11 hardest hit balls came out the bat of the Dodgers, but for whatever reason, they're smoking balls and they're lining out or they're getting singles and not much. So it was interesting. Only 1 extra base hit on the night. A.J. Pollock had that, and we'll get to him in a little bit. So, but that was it. The Dodgers did what they needed to do. They left guys on the bases. I mean, they could have had more. It's one of those games where it's like you feel pretty fortunate to have the inning that they did when you consider the drop ball at home plate that allowed them to score, the error, as well as just like single, seeing eye singles, walks, that kind of stuff. But then there were other innings where it felt like they got 0 and they probably deserved more. So to me, I mean, do you agree? Does 5 feel like the right number of runs for the Dodgers in this game?
I think they should have had more. If you saw the 6th inning on, they were getting guys on base pretty much every inning. They had the leadoff man on 4 out of 5 times. So I think they need to be better about getting those runs in. But the way their bullpen has looked so far this season, I mean, 5 was enough. And when the Astros didn't know what was coming, so they weren't putting the best at bats together. So 5 was enough tonight, but in the future, I definitely want to see them better with runners in scoring position. They're going to need to do more than that if they want to be, the best offense in the league as they've been touted to be.
Yeah, and somebody, Coop Life, pointed out that it was Betts with the double, not Pollock. Betts had the double, the tomahawk. Right. That in the last, which was, again, I mean, Kike was on first, and you're almost like a double with a guy on first and 2 outs, and he doesn't even come close. But it was kind of a weird double. So, I mean, the Dodgers clearly deserved to win tonight. There was no debating about that. Again, they hit the ball harder, and their pitching. Their pitching was the other thing. I mean, the bullpen was fantastic. 5 1/3 innings. I believe Janssen was the only guy who allowed a hit. 6 strikeouts on the night for the bullpen. Here's the thing that stood out to me. So Buehler throws hard, 22 pitches over 96 miles an hour. But how about this? Gratterall, 77 pitches over 99.9. Kelly threw 5 over 96. Ferguson was a surprise of the night, 9 over 96. He hit 97. I've never seen him touch 97. Treinen comes in and throws 12 over 96. So we're talking about, an absurd number, 34 pitches from the bullpen over 96 miles an hour. These guys are just throwing hard, and the Astros had no answer for it. Strikeouts, pop-outs, ground-outs, no hits until Janssen came in the ninth.
Yeah, and I think when we get to October, we've seen in the past that throwing hard like that's a recipe for success. So I was happy when Friedman went out and got all those guys that throw 96 plus. I don't care where the pitch is. When it's 99 miles an hour, it's not easy to hit. So that was good to see. Let me get back to Kelly real quick because I was just scrolling through Twitter and I got a few quotes of his post game.
Cool.
So I'm gonna read
Do
those. On his pitch to Bregman, he said, "It was a ball. Obviously, it wasn't my best pitch. It was ball 4." And then talking about Correa, he said, "I threw my curveball. I guess they didn't take too kind to a curveball. It is what it is." And then the last one, I pitch competitively. With no fans here, it's easy to hear some stuff. So he kind of took the high road there a little bit, not surprising. But at the end of the day, he's getting the last laugh, I feel like, and they're all kind of laughing in that clubhouse right now.
Yeah. Joe Kelly has earned the respect of his teammates, that is for sure, especially because he got out of the inning. I mean, I wonder, it might have been a different story if he allows a couple runs there, but I mean, that's the way to do it. Ball 3, throw it over the top of the guy. You don't hit anybody. You don't hurt anybody. You get out of the inning. All is well. Yeah. And so just scrolling through again, if you're just joining us, throw your top 3 storylines in there. I think this was a good one. Harold threw in there. Top 3, Pollock getting 2 hits. I think he actually had 3 hits. Kelly, the hero, and Dodgers manufacturing runs however possible. I mean, Pollock, again, you say you joke, you stand for Joe Kelly. I stand for A.J. Pollock. I think this is a guy that's good. He's in against lefties. He had a good night tonight. Just, solid contact, keeping the offense moving. So that was good. That was good to see. Anything you saw out of Pollock that looked different? Did he look more comfortable to you?
Yeah, he reported to camp late. Let's not forget he had coronavirus and he's been going on with a lot of stuff at home. He was just able to finally take his daughter home the other day. Yeah. So the last few weeks haven't been easy for him. And it's not, I don't think it's a bad thing to say baseball wasn't necessarily his primary focus when he's dealing with coronavirus and a daughter who was born prematurely who's been in the hospital for 100 days. So I think now he's just kind of getting back into the groove of things. It was by far the best he's looked. I mean, 3 hits, that you love to see that out of your 8-hole hitters. So, yeah, I think as he continues to get more at bats and see more time in the field, I think he's going to be a solid player as he's always been when healthy.
Yeah, and the other guy on offense that obviously had a big night tonight was Mookie. I mean, this is a guy that Dodger fans, he's fielded well. He had the big run on opening night, but tonight felt like the first time. He was 2 for 4 with a double. Like I said, the only extra base hit the Dodgers had. He had a walk. He scored a run. It's starting to feel like maybe he's settling in. Maybe tonight was the night that gets him over the hump, settles him into his routine, settles him into the new digs, and allows him to just sort of carry this forward.
Yeah, Mookie's the last guy I'm going to worry about on this team. I mean, everyone has a bad weekend every now and then, and it just happened to be his first weekend in a Dodger uniform. So Mookie's going to be fine. He's a former MVP. He's been doing this for a while. So, yeah, I'm not worried that he had a quote-unquote bad weekend.
That reminded me of A-Rod the other night when I think he said something to he's like, Mookie Betts is the last guy I'd ever, worry about. And he's like, well, and Cody Bellinger, too. It's like, okay, so he's not the last guy? Like, which one of them's the last? And then my favorite part was, Justin Turner's up next, who, for me, that's the last guy I'd ever worry about. So it's just funny. I mean, classic A-Rod. Shout out to Fox Sports. I mean, it was a better experience tonight than maybe it's because we had our boy Eric Karros on the call. Yeah, if you're not in LA, I mean, watching there. So that was a pretty funny deal. So I mean, the other big storyline, I think a lot of fans are probably engaged. And again, if you're watching, please throw a comment, throw a question in there, and we'll get to those here in just a second. Is Walker Buehler? The stat line is not the prettiest stat line you're ever going to see. What did he have? Finished with 3.2, I believe. What did you see from Buehler? 3.2 innings, 3 hits, 1 walk, 2 earned runs, 3 strikeouts. Did give up a home run. I mean, not great. Did you feel like he was off? Did you feel like it was a little bit of bad luck? Did you feel like this is just some rust for the first start for a guy who was admittedly late coming back and a little bit behind some of the other starters?
Yeah, to be honest, I didn't think he looked that bad. He had a couple quick innings where he was cruising. The homer to Correa was just a pitch right down the middle. So, I mean, it's his first outing. He had 2 outings, 2 sim games leading up to this. So he hasn't faced another team until tonight. And it's your first outing of the year. You're facing the Astros, so it's not the easiest thing to do. But he looked good for someone who's basically still in spring training mode. I thought he was supposed to get up to around 75 pitches tonight, and they ended up pulling him at only 57. But I think that ended up being a good decision because Adam Kolarek came in and got out of a jam, which at that point the Dodgers were losing 2-0, so you don't want to put yourself in an even bigger hole there. So I actually like that decision, and I think, like we talk about who's the last hitter that we're going to worry about, Buehler would be the last guy on this pitching staff that I would worry.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think they mentioned on the broadcast that Pollock had a 2-pitch win, which was like the fewest pitches in I don't know how long for a guy to get the win. But good for him. But I mean, I'm with you. Buehler's not a guy I'm worried about. Again, I mean, 2 earned runs. For Buehler, that's not terrible until you see he only lasted 56 pitches, as you said, 3 2/3. But it's his first start. Houston's really good, too. Like, let's not pretend. Yeah. If he had that performance against the Giants, maybe we'd be a little bit more concerned. But it was against the Astros, who, aside from the Dodgers, maybe the Yankees, I mean, those 3 teams are probably offensively in a league of their own compared to everyone else. But I think that almost just feeds into was the brightest spot of the whole game, aside from the Joe Kelly moment, which was the bullpen. I mean, we had an article that got posted that I wrote today about what is the bullpen going to look like at the end of the year? How are these guys going to rank? And I think it's a fascinating conversation. And I think tonight was the perfect example of why that is. We've got Gratterall, who 1 inning, no hits, 2 strikeouts, 7 pitches over 99.9. So 6 over 100, plus a slider that might be nastier than his fastball. I mean, the guy is filthy when he's on. Then you have a guy like Joe Kelly who came in, who was a bit shaky, but overall, I mean, he's throwing 96 a ton. He gets out of the inning. Ferguson was a revelation tonight. I mean, like I said, I've never seen, I figure that's a guy that sits 94, 95. He touched 97. He had 10 pitches over 96, struck out the side. And then you have Treinen come in, who it's like, you're seeing Gratterall, Kelly, Ferguson. You think you might be getting a break. And then his first pitch is 99 miles an hour and just freaking dropping off the face of the earth. So he was, I mean, and his inning didn't end up looking as pretty. I don't think he had any strikeouts. So before we get to Kenley Janssen, because I know that's a talking point a lot of people are mentioning in the comments, Kolarek, Gratterall, Kelly, Ferguson, Treinen, I mean, that's nasty stuff right there.
Yeah, and we've talked about on past shows how improved this Dodger bullpen is. They've added Gratterall and Treinen this offseason. They still have, Kenley and Baez and the lefties, Kolarek and Ferguson and all those guys. So I think we're looking at the best Dodger bullpen that we've seen, in a long time. I know that 2017 wasn't bad either when they had Brandon Morrow, but this is the deepest bullpen they have. They got so many guys that are quote unquote reliable when typically there's been years where there's only been 1 or 2 guys that are reliable in this bullpen. So I think what we've seen so far to start this year is just kind of, reaffirmation of what we were expecting. I think it will be a large topic of conversation this season. If Kenley starts struggling a little bit, there's 3 or 4 guys who could potentially take his spot as a closer. So that's a good problem to have for sure. But I think it's going to be fun to watch. And Gratterall, sorry, messed up his name there, but he's coming in 21 years old, throwing 100 miles an hour 7+ times, and I'm just excited that we're going to be able to watch that for the next however many years because he's just a blast to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, if you read the article, and is it Treinen or Treinen? I'll butcher that.
I think it's Treinen.
Treinen. Okay, I'm going to try and get better with that. But Treinen, I mean, he's the guy that I basically wrote. I said by the end of the season, I think he's going to be the Dodgers' best reliever, and I believe I had Gratterall second ahead of Janssen because I think on potential it's there. Also, I was overreacting to an exhibition game, but we'll leave that part out of this for now. But let's talk about Janssen because I think tonight is one of those nights where you're going to see whatever you want to see in Kenley Janssen. If you are anti-Kenley Janssen, you're going to look at this game and you're going to say, he gave up a double, it was shaky, it never looked totally good, no strikeouts. And if you love Janssen, you're going to look and say, yeah, it's not 95, but it was 91. The movement was about as good as, I can remember seeing on Janssen in the last year and a half. And on top of it, yes, he gave up a double, but anybody who watched that, it was like a jam shot that popped over the third baseman with the left fielder basically playing in center. So, that was, the announcers thought it was a single because they just assumed it was hit so softly. So, all things considered, he wasn't, and he was missing bats too. He didn't get a strikeout, but he did have a number of swinging strikes. So, what was I mean, we've seen him twice now. I joked this is Kenley Janssen experience part 1 because it's his first save, high leverage opportunity, kind of lived up to the expectations. But I mean, what's your take on Janssen right now? Give me a confidence level of 1 to 10.
Mm-hmm. I'd say I'm in the middle. Whenever Kenley takes the mound, no matter how good he looks, you're always going to be a little bit nervous just because of everything that's happened throughout his career. So that's natural. But and his velo is down, so I'd say it's a little bit concerning. But at the same time, we've seen throughout his career, when his cutter is moving the most and he's spotting it the way he was tonight, that's when he's been at his best. It doesn't necessarily have to be his velocity's up. So if he's sitting 91, 92, but the cutter's moving a ton and it's going from one side and breaking all the way to the other and landing on the corner, that could be very successful. I think it's when he starts leaving pitches over the middle of the plate is when he runs into trouble.
Yeah.
So we'll just have to kind of wait and see. But they're going to leave him in that closer role until he implodes. So let's just keep hoping for the best.
Yeah.
And we'll see what happens, I guess.
Well, and I think if you're kind of one of the analytics type folks, you're probably, even if you don't think Janssen's the best pitcher, I mean, Treinen was the one who came in and faced the heart of the order. So I think, it kind of worked out perfectly for everyone because Treinen, who might be your best relief pitcher, comes in and faces the heart of the order, and Janssen just happens to be the guy in the ninth to get the close. So, I mean, that worked out nicely for tonight. But if tomorrow night the Dodgers are up 1, 2, 3 runs and you have Altuve, Correa, Bregman, Springer coming up, I'd be a little more nervous. I'll put it that way.
No, I agree 100%. And I actually, another guy who writes for us, Future Dodgers, I was talking to him as well, and he mentioned the same thing about Treinen facing the heart of the order. So sometimes it's not necessarily about, what inning you pitch, it's about who you face, and tonight it was Treinen facing the best hitters, and it worked. So
yeah, absolutely. Well, again, the Dodgers get a big win tonight, 5-2 over the Astros. It was a great game. Kind of we said it at the top, everything that you would have wanted as a Dodger fan. They beat the Astros. They got a little bit of revenge, if you want to call it that, with Joe Kelly thrown over the top. We're still deciding where we're going to put the Joe Kelly statue back at Dodger Stadium, so we'll figure that one out once in the coming days. But it was a good night for the Dodgers. And so let's close with this. Again, if you've got questions, if you've got reactions, please leave those in the comments, and we'll get to some of those. But a couple people are commenting on Dustin May. So tomorrow we've got one more game with the Astros. Dustin May is on the mound. What are you expecting? I mean, do you think are we going to get a full? Is this a guy that can throw 80, 90 pitches? Is this going to be a shortened game? What are you expecting? A lot of the big arms came out tonight, so it'll be fascinating to see. And I believe it's an early start tomorrow, right? It's a day game, I think. So,
well, it's 4:10 West Coast time.
Okay.
So it was 6:10 local time, 4:10 on the West Coast. So a little earlier than tonight. But yeah, I think Dustin May, he came out looking good in his first outing. So if he could come out with that same intensity, I think he's going to have a good outing, and he should be able to expand his pitch count a little more. I think he threw like 70 something pitches last time, so he might be able to get up to 80 or 90. But I think what we've seen from him in his young career to this point is he's kind of struggled when facing hitters for the third time through the order. So maybe he gets through 4 or 5 innings twice through the order, and then they go to the bullpen. But I think that all kind of just depends on how he looks. But that's another guy with velocity that the Astros are going to have to worry about.
Yeah. And just to circle back to something, so Janssen threw 17 pitches and got 4 swinging strikes tonight. So that's fine. It's not everything you want, but it's not bad either. But yeah, I think tomorrow will be interesting. Dustin May on the mound. Obviously pitched really well on opening day, and you kind of wonder. I mean, this is a guy that there's no doubt about the stuff that he has. The question is, what kind of consistency? That's what they always say. Like a lot of these guys, even at AA, AAA majors, these are all guys that have stuff. Dustin May is in the 99th percentile of stuff. The question is always consistency. And, maybe it worked in Dustin May's favor that he found out he was pitching the day before or the day of, and so maybe there's less time to process. I mean, this is a big game for a young kid in Houston with the sort of heightened tension of everything that just happened tonight. I mean, because even you got to think a guy like May, who's a young guy, there's probably a part of him that's a little worried about letting a pitch slip. And what are the consequences of, if I throw a 2-seamer that slips a little bit and ends up, shoulder high on George Springer, what does that mean for Cody Bellinger? What does that mean for Mookie Betts? But it'll be really interesting to see how he adjusts. He doesn't seem like a guy who's rattled. He doesn't seem like a guy who's worried about the big moment. And so I'll be really hopeful to see what we get out of him tomorrow.
Yeah, and we don't know who he's going up against. The Astros haven't named their starter. It was supposed to be Justin Verlander, but he just went on the DL with a forearm strain. So it could very well be a bullpen game for the Astros, which I think would bode well in the Dodgers' favor. They got 7 rookies in their bullpen right now. So, and we saw some good at bats off them tonight. So hopefully they could go out and give them some early runs to work with, and that could kind of calm them down a little bit. And I think another thing that works in his favor is the Astros. They're a very right-handed heavy lineup, and he's kind of been really good against righties, maybe struggled a bit against lefties so far in his career. So I think it'll be good facing a right-handed heavy lineup.
Look at you, Daniel, bringing some hot analysis right there. Right-handed pitching. I don't even know if you're right. I'll just take your word for it, but I like that. Yeah, and I mean, the nice thing is we're talking about the bullpen. You see all these names: Kolarek, Gratterall, Kelly, Ferguson, Shrine, and Janssen. I mean, that's probably the top half of the Dodgers bullpen. But remember, they had a day off on Monday. So if you really needed any of those guys, I don't think any of them would be off limits, while you still have Floro and Baez and some fresh arms out there as needed as well. So that'll be interesting. Anything else? I mean, as we sort of wrap this show up, as we look ahead to tomorrow, are there any particular things you're keeping an eye out, players that you want to sort of expect big things from, or just to keep an eye on?
I just want to see them keep taking good at bats. I feel like that's what's kind of important early on in the season. As long as they keep hitting the ball hard, the luck will come. Corey Seager's hitting the ball as hard as anyone and doesn't have a whole lot to show for it. But as long as he keeps taking that approach and hitting the ball hard, the hits will come, and this team is going to score a ton of runs this season. So yeah.
And I mean, I guess we haven't gotten a chance to talk since the last 2 Giants games. Obviously, the Dodgers score just a handful of runs against arguably the worst team in baseball, against a bunch of bullpen pitchers that we've never even heard of before, or guys that aren't very good. Now, to be honest, I was actually impressed with the Giants bullpen a little bit on Sunday, so maybe some of those guys are better than we give them credit for. But you kind of spoke to this. I mean, the question in my head is, am I worried? Sunday was one of the most miserable baseball watching experiences of my life. I apologize to anybody who follows me on Twitter, because it was a bunch of just me being frustrated and angry, and I don't even want to talk about why Dave Roberts left all the righties in to face that guy Rogers, but I'm over it. But I mean, the question is, like, you look at the exit velocity stuff, and it's, am I worried about the Dodgers hitting? They crushed it in the Summer League. They crushed it in the exhibition games. They crushed it the first 2 games against the Giants, and then everything went cold. And even tonight, 1 extra base hit. They did scrap together some hits that, to me, I look at the exit velocity and I say it's going to come around. It's going to come around. Now, I don't know why the home runs aren't there. It feels like the ball just dies on the warning track, and I don't get it. Yeah. But to me, I feel like it's early. All that stuff, there's a part of me that's worried, but there's a part of me that says the exit velocity tells me that this all is going to sort of work itself out.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the one thing to be a little bit concerned about is just that the season is so short. It's only 60 games. So you can't keep sitting here saying, oh, they'll come out of it forever. At a certain point, they're going to have to start hitting and racking up these wins. But then also, with the expanded postseason, they don't really have to win the division anymore. They might not even have to come in second. So I still think it's way too early to be concerned, especially when you consider the fact that they only had a couple weeks of spring training and they didn't even play against other teams. They were just playing each other.
Yeah.
So I think after 4 or 5 games, it's still way too early. But at the same time, we know how much talent this lineup has. So we want to start seeing them putting that on display. And as long as they keep hitting the ball hard, as I've said all show, it'll happen.
Yeah. We'll end with a couple questions. One Bad Biscuit comments, how long do you think it'll take Bellinger to blow up this season? Any concerns about Bellinger? I mean, I know we're talking about the whole team and saying no, but with Bellinger in particular, I mean, it's a guy who changed his swing. It's a guy who's hitting .227 on the season. And maybe to some degree it hasn't seemed like it's clicked even as much as some of the other guys. I mean, do you see anything in Bellinger that concerns you, or is this more of just give it time? Tomorrow could be his day.
Yeah, I mean, the stance change might lead to a little bit of concern just because we haven't really seen him have success with this stance. But, I mean, he's still the MVP. He's going to break out at some point, even if he doesn't have, an MVP season. But there's so many guys in this lineup picking up the slack that it doesn't have to be him every night. And also one thing that I remember Joe Davis pointed out on the broadcast tonight as well is he struck out, I think it was in the third inning, and that was his first strikeout all season. So he's putting the ball in play at least. It's not like he's going up there and just whiffing at every pitch. So I think we got to give it some time. It's Cody Bellinger at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those you could see it either way. He's hitting 227. He did strike out twice tonight. On the flip side, he's reached base every game. He's got hits in 4 of them, walked in the 5th. So, it's kind of a pick whatever viewpoint you want to take there. Another question, this kind of is shifting gears a little bit, but looking big major league picture. Do you think there will be a hiatus this season due to the Marlins and possible outbreaks? Obviously, we posted a video of this yesterday. I've got some thoughts on this. It's kind of a mess. I mean, we've been talking about the whole time on this show that we can't believe that the plan was to play in home parks and to jump on planes and to be in hotels. And so, it's kind of a mess. I heard the Marlins story. It's one person, then it's 4 people, then it's 11 people, and then it's half of the team, and now they're not playing baseball for a week. And that's obviously incredibly concerning. The flip side, which I think was the really good news, every other team in baseball has had 0 positive tests in the last, I believe it's 4 days. So they probably didn't do tests. So probably the last 2 or 3 days worth of testing, 0 positives from any team, not the Marlins. We'll see what happens with the Phillies. If the Phillies can stay healthy and not have anybody test positive, that'll be a big thing. But so it's kind of one of those things where it's a both and. On one hand, the Marlins, there's reports that some of the guys went out after an exhibition in Atlanta. Those were the guys that got sick. They spread it to the whole team. The whole thing's a disaster. So what do you think? I mean, I was very skeptical this morning as the day went on and more information came out. I said, well, maybe this is an isolated thing. Maybe it is just the Marlins and the rest of these teams can figure it out and stay healthy. Do you think we get through a 60-game season, let's even say for every team but the Marlins? I mean, does every team but the Marlins play 60 games this year?
Yeah. Look, we came into the season, as optimistic as possible. We know there's a pandemic going on, and it's super contagious. So there's definitely dangers, but we tried to be optimistic. And this happening the first weekend isn't exactly ideal. You never want to see one guy get it, let alone a whole team. We saw with Eduardo Rodriguez on the Red Sox that he's dealing with a heart condition now because of coronavirus. So for all the people who want to say, oh, these guys are all young, they'll go through it and they'll be fine and it's no big deal, not so fast. There could be long-term health effects. So it's not ideal that we're less than a week into the season and almost a full team has it, and especially kind of the way it happened. If it's true, if they went out, the guys need to be smarter than that. And also a group text between the Marlins players decided that if they were gonna play Sunday's game or not. I'd like to see a little bit better protocols than that. The league spent 4 months arguing about money when they could have been putting in proper health and safety protocols. So I hope something like that doesn't happen again. But like you said, it was only the Marlins. No other teams have any positive tests. So I'm gonna continue to remain optimistic just because I don't want to be that negative Nancy pessimistic guy saying the season's going to be a disaster. But yeah, I'm just hoping for the best. And I think the Marlins, this happening right now will kind of be a wake up call for the rest of the league that they all need to be extra careful. They can't just be going out on game night or on nights they have off. They can't, maybe don't be high-fiving in the dugout and stuff like that. Let's be as cautious as possible and let's get through this season without any issues.
Yeah. Well, here I just got this text message. This was a quote from Dusty Baker on Dodger reliever Joe Kelly. Quote, "What really enraged everybody was what he told Carlos when he struck him out. Nice swing, blank." Was apparently what he said. Now the cameras didn't appear to catch that. I mean, he made faces and walked off the mound for about 10 seconds before he said anything. And even so, like I think I might like Joe Kelly more if that's actually true that that's what he said. But I mean, Correa's staring him down for 10 seconds. So you stare at a guy for 10 seconds. I don't think you could be too disappointed about, like, obviously the guy's going to say something. Everybody knew that was a moment. That was what was happening. Correa was asking for it. Then he got to the big tough guy, hold me back kind of thing. As soon as 10 guys get in between, he jumps out in front. P.S., by the way, shout out to Jock Peterson. I believe he was the first guy over the fence. He was out there. He was ready to mix it up. Kershaw was playing peacemaker, I think, but Jock looked like he was ready to roll. So, but I mean, what do you think? I mean, Baker says he doesn't like that Joe Kelly's talking to his guys. I mean, this sounds so pathetic and so like childish to me.
I mean, he's the Astros manager, so you got to take whatever he says with a grain of salt. Obviously, he's going to defend his guys. But also, earlier in the inning on the Brantley ground ball when Kelly went to cover first base, we could hear it loud and clear on the broadcast. Yeah. Someone from the Astros dugout yelled at him, "Just get on the mound and pitch, little blank." Yeah. So there was jawing going both ways. Who knows who started it? It's clear these teams don't like each other, but whatever, Dustin.
Yeah, and I mean, did Joe Kelly get stepped on at first base when he went over to cover? I mean, it goes back and forth, and you didn't see Kelly whining and complaining about it. It was just,
exactly.
We whatever. It happens. Okay, one last question. This is a good one from Peyton in the chat. He asks about Alex Wood. The other big Dodger news today was that Alex Wood landed on the injured list. Didn't have a great start. Are we concerned? I'll take this. I mean, first of all, you never want to root for a guy to be injured, but as poorly as he pitched the other night, you're sort of hopeful that it was something mechanical, that it was something health related. That, I mean, if that's Alex Wood at full strength, then that's not great. I will say my level of concern with Wood is actually reasonably high, and that's because the more I thought about it when he had this poor outing and I was trying to figure out like what was it? I mean, this is a guy who when he was here, he pitched great a couple years ago. Then he left and he wasn't very good. He didn't pitch very much, but he wasn't very good. And then he came back and all of a sudden everyone's just penciling him in to be the number 3, number 4 starter, to be back in his all-star, 3.5 ERA guy. And it was almost like, were we assuming or expecting too much of the Dodgers, just expecting this magic fairy dust to fall on Alex Wood and he becomes an infinitely better pitcher? I mean, the answer with the Dodgers is yes, we are expecting that. But I watched that game and I'm like, I mean, maybe he's just not very good. Like maybe this is who he is. Obviously, he's on the injured list. So, again, I'm not hoping he's injured, but I'm hopeful that he comes back to full strength and we figure out that was just sort of an aberration there. But, I mean, what's your take on Wood going to the injured list? And we could talk a little bit about who replaces him as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to have a high level of concern considering it's been a while since Alex Wood has been good. He's dealt with a bunch of injuries. And when you're talking about shoulder inflammation, that's never what you want to hear for a pitcher. Yeah. So especially in a shortened season like this, like if he's shut down for a few weeks, that means it's going to take a few more weeks for him to get built up. And then the next thing you know, the season's over. So I'm not expecting a whole lot from Wood to finish out the season. Maybe it's not a big deal and he's back in a couple weeks and he's healthy and looks great. That would be awesome. But even if he isn't, this rotation, I think will be, just fine without him. Dustin May could take that spot once Clayton Kershaw comes back. We got Tony Gonsolin is at the alternate site, continuing to build up to get ready for the season. Josiah Gray could even be an option. I know he might not quite be ready yet, but who knows? He's got great stuff and he's a future top of the line starter. So maybe you throw him into the fire and it works out. But yeah, I think we got to wait to see just how bad this injury is before we could assess our level of concern. But I do think you're right that it kind of makes a bit more sense now why he looked so bad the other night if he was dealing with shoulder injuries. So yeah.
You forgot your boy out in the bullpen as a potential starting pitching replacement.
Dennis Santana. I don't know about that. He's pretty low on the list.
Yeah. So the guy they recalled, Josh Spores, is a relief pitcher. I mean, he made 46 appearances at AAA last year, all of them in relief. Last time he started was in 2017. So he's clearly not the answer. You kind of touched on it. Clayton Kershaw is the wild card. There's some debate about how quickly he could be ready. And so he might be able to, with an off day, they might be able to push people back just a little bit and just get Kershaw to take that spot. But yeah, I think the other name that's interesting is Gonsolin. I mean, Tony Gonsolin's a guy that many people, he might have beaten Dustin May to the starting job if he was ready. Apparently, he was a little bit late to camp, wasn't fully ready to go. May got that spot. So Gonsolin's a guy who's done it at the major league level. So I mean, that's what's funny is a lot of these guys that are coming and replacing. It's like I almost feel better about them. Like if you said, "Hey, do you want to throw Alex Wood back out there, or do you want to put Gonsolin in, or do you want to put some?" I'd be like, I mean, the 7th, 8th guys. There's not a big drop off between numbers 3 and numbers 8 for the Dodgers.
Yeah, and one thing I've talked about on past shows as well, and something we got to keep an eye on is who's going to establish themselves as that 4th starter. In the playoffs, we all know you need 4 starters. Right now, if Kershaw's healthy, we know it's him and Buehler at the top. Julio Urias is probably going to be that third guy. So we just need one more guy to establish himself as that fourth guy, whether it's a healthy Wood, Dustin May, Gonsolin. They got some options. So we'll just see who sets themselves apart from the pack throughout the course of this season.
Yeah, and admittedly, Urias didn't look super great in his first start either. So it's against the Giants. So it's not like he looked decent against the Astros. I mean, he looked a little bit shaky. He looked okay against the Giants, which isn't. That's not what you want. You want a guy like Urias to come out and be great for 5 or 6 innings against the Giants. He did okay. It wasn't terrible, but given what he was up against. So, I mean, that'll be a storyline. I think if you're looking for storylines for the Dodgers through basically a week of the season, I think starting pitching has to be just at the top of that list because Kershaw's out. Buehler was late. I mean, those are your top 2 guys. Price is your number 3. He opted out. Alex Wood was your number 4. He's hurt. And Urias is your number 5, and who knows what you're going to get out of him. So it's a fascinating group. The Dodgers are 3-2. I joked way back at the beginning, hey, as long as they can split with the Giants. Now, I felt terrible about a split after they went 2-0 and after I was reminded of who the Giants starting rotation was and lineup was. But you get a win here, 3-2. I mean, they're in a good spot. Everybody in baseball makes the playoffs this year. There's no home field advantage. So as much as I hate that, there is an element where it's like, hey, you know what? You don't really have to worry too much about this. So,
exactly.
Yeah. And Stripling, I mean, couple people know that. I mean, Stripling was probably the best starter the Dodgers have had so far.
Definitely.
So that's something they've got to feel good about. So, well, that'll do it for us tonight. Lots of stuff to cover. A great game. We've got another one tomorrow night. And then we're not sure when our next one of these will be. We might hop back on Thursday night or Friday night. Depending on, or I guess there's no game on Thursday, right? So Friday night we might be live.
They do play Thursday.
They do play Thursday.
They're in Arizona.
Okay.
And real quick before we get off, I just got word that head over to our YouTube page right after this. We're gonna have the Joe Kelly postgame interview. Will be up momentarily. All the other postgame interviews. So if you want to hear what all those guys have to say about the Astros and the benches clearing incident, head over to our YouTube page, Dodger Blue.
There you go. Good stuff there. So we appreciate you guys tuning in. We appreciate the comments. This was a fun one. The Dodgers win 5-2. They get a little bit of revenge. They move to 3-2 on the season. And that'll do it for us. As Daniel said, check out DodgerBlue.com. We'll have all sorts of game recaps and quotes. On our YouTube channel, we'll have all sorts of post-game interviews, and then follow us on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram as well for everything you need Dodgers related. That'll do it. Have a good night, and we'll see you next time.